Cool. All right, so let's see. We have Julie and Steve and Susan from my office in the city of South Portland. We've got Aaron and Katie from City of Portland's Sustainability Office, and then we have Bruce from City of Portland's Planning Office, who will be sharing updates on their end. But we're going to start with a presentation from Jean Sideris, who's going to sort of introduce us to Complete Streets. And she's the Executive Director for Bicycle Coalition of Maine. And I'll let her take it away.
Great. Thanks, Cashel. Thanks, everybody. Good morning. I am Jean Sideris. I'm the Executive Director of the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about complete streets and active transportation here in the area. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Hopefully this all works. Everyone can see that? Thumbs up? Great. So just real quick, who we are. So the Bicycle Coalition of Maine is a statewide nonprofit, and we're working to make Maine better and safer for biking and for walking. We do this through three core areas: our education work, where we teach kids and adults bicycle and pedestrian safety. We work on advocacy at the local, state, and the national level to really promote policies and programs that improve conditions for people biking and walking. And encouragement, where we host rides and activities and fun ways to be able to enjoy Maine by pedal. So climate change and active transportation. Transportation, really does intersect all aspects of our lives, right? We go to school, we go to work, we run errands. It is everywhere around us. But our transportation system in the US and here in Maine really assumes car ownership and the ability to drive. And that does not make it accessible for everybody. Car ownership, on average, costs about $10,000 a year. So it's a pricey way for us to get around. And our infrastructure is really designed specifically with those assumptions in mind. And here in Maine, transportation accounts for about half of all of our carbon emissions. And of those, about 60% actually come from passenger vehicles. So the Maine Won't Wait Climate Action Plan, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, has several key strategies in it to reduce emissions in the transportation sector. One of those is to reduce vehicle miles traveled by 10% by 2025, which is only 2 years away, guys, and 20% by 2030. So some good, ambitious, but I think doable goals there to really get us out of our cars and reduce vehicle miles traveled. And then another exciting plan, the state of Maine, for the first time ever, has created a statewide active transportation plan. The draft of it was released in late 2022 and is nearly final, but it really lays out a vision for supporting and investing in biking, walking, and other human-powered transportation. So a really great step that the state has taken to lay out a vision for us here. So complete streets. Complete streets really are a pretty simple concept that we're designing the streets for all users. And it's a way to approach the planning and design and building that really ensures safe access for everybody. So this picture here is, I think, is a really great demonstration of, on the left, we have roads that are really designed to move cars quickly. And this is what too much of our infrastructure is designed for. And it's really only a vehicle that is able to utilize that space. And on the right side, you see we've reduced the number of vehicle travel lanes, added bike lanes, a crosswalk, sidewalks, and it's not only given space for other people outside of a car to utilize, but it also slows traffic down, which is really important for improving safety. So it's a really, at its core, a very simple approach to thinking about how we design our infrastructure, our transportation infrastructure, to support lots of different users. And there's a lot of really great reasons why this investment is valuable to all of us. Top on my list is improving public health. One of the things I really love about being able to bike into work is that it embeds that activity in my daily routine, right? It allows you to have these walks or biking as part of it, and sort of gets that exercise and physical activity really as core part of your day. And of course, reducing pollution and improving air quality. and really improving the safety of our streets. Last year in Maine, we had record high roadway fatalities, and we're seeing this nationally as well. So there's a lot of work that we need to do to make our roads safer for everybody that's using them, but particularly for what's often referred to as the vulnerable user, people outside of their vehicles. It also can be really valuable for economic development. Not only does it help people who are unable to drive, the disabilities or low-income households, it gets this design approach that gives other ways to move around, allows people to be able to get to work and have some economic independence in their lives. Really fosters communities and higher quality of life. If you think about when you're walking or biking through a community, the way you can observe it and interact with it around you. Every time I'm on a walk or on a bike, right, you wave at your neighbors, you maybe stop and say hi, you pop into a shop. It really fosters a connection to the place that you live rather than just a drive through it. And I think that's really important for our communities. It's great for small businesses, it's great for tourism, all those pieces. And developing or improving facilities can be done relatively quickly and at a lower cost than building new roads or sort of these larger infrastructure. And improving ability to age in place. Maine is the oldest state in the nation. Being able to ensure that our older population also are able to move around, fostering that community and connectivity again, can really be an important factor in countering social isolation, and it helps people access more services. So it's also really key to ensuring all of our population is able to connect and be able to do what they need to do, especially if they're unable to drive. So this is a question I kind of get a lot in a lot of different forms, but is active transportation, is biking, walking, really a viable travel option in Maine? We're a big state. We're a low population state, and we're in a lot of ways a rural state. So is this really possible here in Maine? And I'm here to tell you absolutely. So I pulled these numbers. These are from the US DOT. So these are Cumberland County trip distances. This covers 2019 through about half of 2022. And you can see these pie pieces here, that darker blue. Nearly a quarter of the trip distances taken in our county are less than 1 mile, and almost half are 3 miles or less. So these are really distances that are able to be replaced by biking, walking, and particularly when you're throwing transit into the mix too. And so, yes, we often have to drive longer distances. I drive up to Augusta. You might be commuting in from Gorham to Portland. So these aren't all of our trips, but for the vast majority, people are needing to get around in places that are actually quite close to them. So I think that this is absolutely viable as we think about replacing car trips, again, reducing vehicle miles traveled, getting us out of our cars and finding other ways to get around. For much of our transportation needs, it's definitely doable. And I just did this a different way. If we look at it from 10 miles or less, over 3/4 of our trip distances are 10 miles or less. Again, these are now viable ways to replace these trips with transit, with biking or walking. And on the biking side, I want to talk a little bit about electric bikes because these are truly a game changer in looking at those trip distances. So an electric bike, I'm going to assume many of you are familiar and hopefully many of you have tried one, is a bicycle that's equipped with a small battery and electric motor. I like to think of them as similar to the moving walkway at an airport. You're walking, but you're just going a little faster. When you're on an electric bike, you're pedaling, but it's just giving you a little extra assist and helping you move along. And they really do expand the functional range of a bicycle where all of a sudden 10 miles becomes a really viable distance for many people. My bike ride into work is about 6 miles. And I don't have an electric bike, but it's doable, but it's kind of far. And if you've got a laptop and a change of clothes and you've got this or that, all of a sudden that can be kind of a challenging amount of distance. But that electric assist really helps you cover that distance. You're not coming into work sweaty and gross and tired. You're coming into work happy and had a really fun bike ride. So, as we think about these, an electric bike in particular is not a replacement for your bike. It's a replacement for many of your car trips. And it also, what we also hear a lot, people who love these bikes If they've had an injury or some physical limitations, this allows them to continue to be really active. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of different policies and programs sort of in this space of active transportation and complete streets. Portland just recently passed a new complete streets policy that's really strong and really lays out some priorities for investing and shaping our road designs in the greater Portland area to really be designed for more users and to make them safer for people outside of their cars in particular. South Portland, I'm a resident of South Portland, and I am very proud of all the stuff that's happening here. It's really great. The Electrify Everything in South Portland includes an e-bike rebate. It is the only city in the state that has an e-bike rebate. I believe Portland's close to follow, so that's really exciting. There's also been a lot of new multi-use path investments. If folks have been along the golf course out in the Thornton Heights part of South Portland, there's a new multi-use path under there that continues under 295. And the next phase will be going all the way over to Red Bank, and there's other ones that are in the work. So really a lot of investments happening of creating safe places for people to bike and walk. The city has also been doing some traffic calming demonstrations, particularly along Broadway in the summer to, again, slow traffic and make it safer and easier for people, particularly pedestrians, to be able to cross the road in some of our high traffic areas in the city. The Bicycle Coalition of Maine, this is our mission. So we've got a couple of things I wanted to share. We'll soon be launching an e-bike test ride program with the Maine DOT, where we'll have a fleet of electric bikes that we can take around and get elected officials, community leaders, anyone who wants to sort of try one out and be able to both understand a little bit more of what it's like to bike in your community and the potential of e-bikes in this transportation space. Just this week, we launched a new bicycle and pedestrian safety instructor certification program. So we do a lot of education work all across the state, and we're looking to build our capacity with an instructor corps that can serve more people all across the state of Maine. And then we also spend a lot of our time monitoring local and state policies and providing input and guidance and our thoughts on those. I just want to touch on a couple of bike ped related bills that are moving through the State House right now. There's one to add e-bikes to the electric vehicle rebate program that's run by Efficiency Maine Trust. So this would actually create an e-bike rebate program for the state. Again, drawing on some of the lessons and successes of the South Portland program and other states in the country. We're also working on one to require traffic safety education in schools. This is not currently a requirement in schools, and we'd like to see the traffic safety sort of age-appropriate learning to how, be visible on the road, make sure you're walking. If you're walking without sidewalk, you're walking opposite traffic, how to bike safely, all these different things to ensure that there's everyone's starting with the same understanding of the rules of the road for all users. Another one I want to mention is one that would allow municipalities to create bike ped zones with reduced speed limits. So right now, if a community wants to reduce speed limit, it's a bit of a I don't know if cumbersome is the right word, but it's a process, and you have to go with the DOT, and the methodologies they use don't always achieve what you want to achieve. So this would allow municipalities on some lower traffic roads and lower speed roads to make these decisions on their own without having to go through a whole speed study and process there. And there's also a couple bills out there to build rail trails. So to take unused rail corridors and build some trails on them. There's one out the Mountain Division line going all the way out to Freiburg, and one from Portland up to Auburn, Lewiston area. So there's a lot of really exciting things moving in the bike ped space in the State House. You can check out our website to find out more about those. And if you want to sign up for our email list, we'll be sending regular updates and sharing ways that you can get involved and be part of that conversation. And I think that's all I had. So we'd answer questions or pass it on to whomever else.
I think we'll keep the presentations going for now, and then just do a big round of questions at the end. So I guess we'll hold them for a second while I share my screen. Thank you, Jean. No, that was great. I wanted to just start by putting all this into the One Common Future context with sort of our goals we're wrapped in building sort of a walking and biking culture in our cities to meet our mode shift goals. Okay. I got a Zoom quit unexpectedly comment. Am I? Okay. All right. So for
I think we're losing Cashel.
Maybe. Oh,
actually, Bruce, Cashel's having difficulty. If you don't mind, maybe doing a bit of your own introduction and just getting going on your slides, that would be great.
Sounds good. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Bruce Hyman, the Transportation Program Manager in the City of Portland's Planning and Urban Development Department. I'm going to take you through some work that we're doing to under the topic of today, complete streets, and hopefully my screen is going to be starting soon. Let's see.
Perfect.
So Jean talked about complete streets and how some of the ways that we can transform some of our local streets and urban streets into more complete streets can be done in a more tactical and lower cost way. We do that in Portland, but I'm going to focus on a number of the more complete streets transformational types of initiatives that we have, and then close with a little bit of information on some of the work that we've done. And I've got probably too many slides, so I'm going to move through them pretty quickly. We went to the City of Planning Department and Public Works, went to the Sustainability and Transportation Committee Wednesday night to give them an update on some of our transformational projects. 6 of them are noted here. I think I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 of them pretty quickly. But we've really been focusing a lot on Forest Avenue in the last 5-6 years. If you know that, it needs a lot of work to become a complete street. We've been doing some of the more incremental stuff. We've been doing paving projects and stuff, but we've got three active transformational initiatives, and I'll go through a couple of them. Brighton Avenue, then Libbytown, and then Franklin Street. I won't talk about that one. That one's an animal all unto itself. Libbytown Safety and Accessibility Project, if you're familiar in the I-295 exit 5 area, Park Avenue and Congress Street are a 2-lane one-way pair. Just about every street segment and many of the intersections are high crash locations. And also have pretty bare bones bikeway facilities on both Park Avenue and Congress Street. So we're looking to, in partnership with the Maine DOT, retrofit much of the area in terms of converting Park Avenue and Congress Street to 2-way, introducing a roundabout where those 2 streets will come together, really upgrade the streetscapes of them. And as you'll see, we're looking to elevate literally and figuratively our bikeway design game in terms of introducing raised cycle tracks, both on Congress Street and Park Avenue. On Congress Street, we're looking at introducing a 2-way cycle track on the south side of Congress Street that would go basically from within the project limits from Valley Street over to the Fore River Parkway, where we have a shared use pathway along the Fore River Parkway. So it's a pretty ambitious project. This is Park Avenue, where we're looking at 2 one-way raised cycle tracks, sidewalk level. A little different in configuration, but generally the same effect through the area. So it's a pretty ambitious project, and we had a very successful meeting about a month ago at Bunker Brewing, where we introduced this project, reintroduced the latest concept to the public, and it was very well received. I'm going to talk about Brighton Avenue multimodal project, basically from just north just west of USM on Brighton Avenue up to almost the Westbrook city line. Right now, it's a pretty bleak scape in terms of biking and walking. In some sections, there's kind of the two travel lanes with the center turn lane, but no bikeway facilities. Pretty poor streetscape and sidewalk conditions as well. In an interim condition, with the money that we have in an impending paving project, we're looking to introduce buffered bike lanes and also enhance the streetscape, increase pedestrian crossings, access to transit. It's a very active transit corridor, and we have a rapid transit study going on that is looking at how we might retrofit the corridor with a high frequency, high quality transit operation on there from Gorham, Westbrook, and Portland, and Brighton Avenue is one of those possible candidate corridors that we're looking at. If we're able to achieve and get and apply for some of the new federal money that's available for transformational type projects, we have a more aspirational type of bikeway facility where we'd like to have a two-way cycle track, sidewalk level, running along the length of Brighton Avenue. And also, again, with those enhanced streetscapes and transit access features as well, but focusing on the bikeway features here in this presentation. In 2018, we completed the so-called Smart Corridor Study, which looked at Forest Avenue in Portland State High, and then across the Casco Bay Bridge, along Broadway into South Portland. It was a very ambitious study. I'm going to focus on some of the Forest Avenue outcomes from that, but we're picking away at it. We implemented phase 1 a couple of years ago in Woodford's Corner, and now we've got phase 2 looking at Morrill's Corner. Again, another pretty bleak streetscape with no bikeway facilities through Morrill's Corner, but with some connecting bikeways on Allen Avenue and to the south on Stevens Avenue, and some on Forest Avenue south of Morrill's Corner. But we're really trying to, this is really a pinch point and a safe, been highlighted as a safety issue for cyclists for many, many years, as well as a safety issue for pedestrians in there. Our concept is to, again, bring raised sidewalk level cycle tracks through the area, really enhance the streetscape, really redesign how Stevens Avenue comes into Forest Avenue and create a plaza, and really just make things much more accommodating for all users. Right now, transit access is really difficult through this area, and we're looking at bringing transit stops within Morrill's Corner as well, so that you can actually transfer between the 9A and the 9B and the number 2 bus as well. So really looking at all modes in this transformation. These are some cross sections of those sidewalk level cycle tracks that we're looking to bring into the intersection, and hopefully we'll be able to continue them further south and to the north once we get through with Morrill's Corner. But we're picking away at things, and these are all $5 to $10 to $15 million projects, and so we've got to do them in segments. A little bit more to the south on Forest Avenue from Woodford's Corner to the USM exit 6 area. Again, no on-street bike facilities for most of this way. The streetscape is very lacking in terms of there's no forest in Forest Avenue. So we're looking to enhance transit access, more pedestrian crossings across Forest Avenue. And part of that is going to be, we hope we can get to a road diet where we eliminate one of the travel lanes, similar to what Jean presented in one of her slides in terms of introducing a center turn lane. That would give us the opportunity to introduce, at least in the short term, we hope, a two-way cycle track along Forest Avenue, and also enhance the streetscape and also enhance, as I mentioned before. A goal in all of these projects is safety, pedestrian safety across the street, but also safety and accessibility to transit stops along this high frequency transit corridor. More aspirationally, again, if we receive some of that congressional funding that's available that everybody's chasing after nationally these days, again, $5 to $10 to $15 million required for these types of projects. But Forest Avenue is also being looked at as one of those rapid transit corridors. So this is kind of the soup to nuts type of complete streets project where you're actually able to introduce dedicated transit lanes, raised cycle tracks, enhanced streetscape elements as well. So we're going for it on a few of these corridors. So those are just an overview of some of our transformational projects that we're trying to advance in concert with the Maine DOT. Those are multi-year initiatives and multi-million-dollar initiatives, but we also do look for ways to incrementally and opportunistically enhance our streetscapes and complete streets. And last year we initiated our Better Bikeways initiative, where we've got some of the more bare bones bike lanes on some of our streets and lacking in pedestrian accessibility across some of the streets. And if you want to see some of the things that we're doing there, the URL is at the bottom of the screen. And I'll pass it back to Cashel.
Thanks, Bruce. All right, let's try this again. And thanks for your patience. All right, so I think that the main One Climate Future goal here is a mode shift goal, an overarching goal to move from our 12% sort of sustainable active transportation segment that we have to 26% by 2035. Sounds close, but it is a lot of trips, and it's going to take a lot of work for people to feel comfortable and feel safe getting around those ways. And so that's the work we're doing, and you've heard a lot about it. But some of the specific goals and objectives we have in the plan are to improve safety and accessibility of transit stops, invest in transit-friendly road design along those transit routes, create policy pathways for strengthening what's known as transit-oriented development, which enables density and developers to build with transit in mind. We want to complete a bikeway network plan by 2026. Then there's a specific mode shift goal for bikes to get up to 5%, which is at about 1%, if that, right now. And then a complete streets design manual produced by 2025. And that's something I'm going to talk about with a little more detail here. So the city ourselves just they passed a complete streets policy in 2017. You heard from Jean that there's now a regional complete streets policy. There's also a state complete streets policy. But our local one sort of committed us to thinking about every mode of travel in our design and ensuring that they're included there. But we never really had the tools to do that, or sort of the guardrails that said when we really needed to be doing these things, money aside, because usually money is the limiting factor. So we got a community action grant from the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and Future to fund a street design technical manual, we're calling it. But in a lot of ways, it's a complete streets manual. We chose Tool Design Group to do that work. They're a company out of Boston that's very familiar with doing these complete streets manuals. We just started this past month, but it's going to be about a 10-month project with completion in November. And all the while, they'll be taking what they know about complete streets and connecting it to the context of South Portland streets. So it's going to start with a road classification effort where we look at every road segment in the city and sort of pick the category of typology that we want to see there. And so on the left, you see sort of a preliminary work that we did for road classification in South Portland. And on the right, you see sort of the final that Auburn, Maine did in their Complete Streets manual that they did, I think, last year. And you can see some of the names of the street types there: city core connector, a local street, neighborhood connector. And that's the lens we're going to look at each of these roads, and from there develop cross sections and features we should be adding to each of the road typologies. So here's two examples I pulled from that Auburn plan. Again, ours will look different and sort of be unique to South Portland, but on the left, a neighborhood greenway; on the right, more commercial section. And it's going to be different for every community. Portland Peninsula in particular is very urban feeling, and South Portland, I think, is a little closer to in Auburn in how a lot of our roads work. But you can see they're going to provide sort of what's required of us in those roadways, and then what's recommended, and we can pick and choose from what they call this is again Auburn's, but a Complete Streets toolbox. The list of treatments for walking and biking facilities, recommendations and where they should be seen. What are the situations where they make sense versus not. And then I pulled just one on the right there, a raised crosswalk as one of the treatments. And they'll define it, they'll say when it should be applied, and sort of the technical specifications of those. So it's really exciting, and it's going to allow us to put into action our Complete Streets policy. And flashed it on the screen earlier, but this whole summer we're going to have a public input piece where plan will sort of be half done, and we'll bring it to everybody through a public meeting, survey, and to some of our committee meetings, which are anybody can show up to, and talk through this plan and see how we can apply it to South Portland and use it to our benefit. So keep an eye out for that. Complete Streets, though, we're not building a lot of new streets here in South Portland. So it's a lot about how we can retrofit our existing streets to make them more complete and be thinking about every mode in our design. So a lot of that just starts with opportunistic planning and trying to take the sort of most problematic or places where most people travel, arterial roads, and trying to make them more complete. So here are a bunch of the projects we have going on in South Portland. This coming year, we are going to see a ton of pedestrian improvements along Cottage Road, all the way from Reds to the Cape Elizabeth boundary. It's mostly ped improvements, but there'll be paving, and in that effort, adding a bunch of curb extensions, which will improve crossing all along Cottage Road for pedestrians. We have the third phase of our Westbrook Street multi-use path that we just got funded. So that's going to be from exit 3 to Red Bank, and Jean mentioned it earlier, but right now we finished the exit 3 to Westcott Road section. And that's a critical connection from the west side to the east side. It's the only connection, and before that multi-use path, it was really hectic getting across. We are working on a neighborhood byway concept from Thornton Heights to Cash Corner in an effort to create a safe route to school across the city that gets kids off of Broadway and onto lower volume local roads. And something we're working on the Friends of Thornton Heights and Bike Ped Committee with. And it's very conceptual right now, and we don't have funding or anything like that, but with the middle school merge in South Portland, it's going to be critical to have a safe route across the city. And we all know what Broadway can be like, so it probably won't involve Broadway in the near term. And so what a neighborhood byway allows you to do is create a safe route to school now while you look to longer term improvements along Broadway. We do have some money to make pedestrian improvements all along Broadway. This is a bonded project from 2019, I believe, and pinpoints a number of pedestrian crossings the entire stretch of Broadway. And we'll be making those next year and probably in 2025 as well, as we just got funding for that. Casco Bay Bridge is a common conversation starter among people who walk and bike it. It was definitely not designed for walkers or bikers. That is evident, but you know, we're doing a lot of thinking about how we might change the design however we can to make it better. And part of that is taking advantage of just a routine paving project on it next year. And our two cities and DOT are talking about how we might go about restriping it so that it's better for biking on road there. There's nothing near term we can do with a 5-foot sidewalk that people have to squeeze past each other on. But you know, long term, it's definitely something we want to do something with. And then a Lincoln Street multi-use path, which is a really exciting one, but keeps jumping in price every time we put it out to bid. And so we've been facing our own tails with how much it costs and cannot get full funding for it. But it's the preliminary designs for it are complete, and you can check them out on DOT's website. But it would run a multi-use path from Veterans Memorial Bridge, where there already is an existing multi-use path, along Lincoln Street to along Broadway all the way to the Greenbelt, and really would be a crucial connection for a lot of people going from Portland, South Portland, Portland, and just throughout South Portland. We also have a number of sort of ongoing transit improvements and bike improvements that we're doing. You know, the Metro and Biddeford, Sauk, Old Orchard Beach, and the South Portland bus service meet constantly about how they can better coordinate amongst themselves. And some of that is aligning schedules, some of that is aligning their branding and ticketing. So that's happening. They also have a transit stop access program that's been ongoing for a decade, but they're really working to pinpoint a number of transit stops that need to be improved, and the last mile connection of sidewalks that will really improve transit accessibility for a lot of people. And then bike culture, Jean mentioned our e-bike rebate program that we have in South Portland, and a hopefully soon coming one in Portland. If you don't know about that, we're offering right now $300 off an e-bike and $500 off an e-cargo bike. And I can provide more info on that, but you know, it's great, really great. Bruce didn't mention it, but they have a bike share program that they launched last year, and we're hoping to expand into South Portland this year, and we're in early talks about that. But critical to have a you know, a big bike share like that, a sort of community-oriented, community-organized one like they went with, and really great numbers. You know, it launched late last year, but a lot of people are using it and are excited about it. And a good chunk of them are e-bikes, so that's fun, zipping up the hills in Portland. And then we're looking to add bike racks just long term, because we know that's a critical part of sort of a comfortable bike culture, is having a place to park when you get somewhere. And so we're thinking about that. And then last slide, and then we'll open up to questions, but I wanted to mention some complete streets sort of oriented plans that are going on. I mentioned the street design tech manual. At the regional level, GPCOG is working on a Vision Zero action plan. You know, this is a roadmap to zero deaths. So they're not just looking at the active transportation, sort of non-single occupancy vehicle world, but they're looking at the whole picture and saying, how can we reduce traffic deaths through behavior, through design, through emergency response, and creating this plan sort of as a roadmap to that zero death goal. And it will also, once we complete the plan, free up the ability to apply for a Safe Streets for All grant, which is a new grant program from the Inflation Reduction Act. And it has potential to be a lot of money, and like a really substantial influx of money to high crash locations in our community. So kudos to GPCOG on working on that and getting that plan in place so that we could go for those grants. Regardless, I think that that plan will be a really great one to point to. South Portland is working on a comprehensive plan update. It's going to look at the entire city and vision setting for the next 12 years in South Portland. But it does include a robust bike ped transit component, and it's a huge part of our vision for the next 12 years. And keep an eye out for public engagement opportunities this summer. They're doing a ton of public meetings and surveys to provide input and make your voice heard for how you want these things to look in the next 12 years. And part of the comprehensive plan update will include a Willard Beach master plan that will look more locally at the Willard neighborhood and transportation issues and circulation in the area. So that's all I have. And I'd love to open it up for questions. Ginger, go ahead.
Hi there. Thanks for the presentation. My husband and I are 22-year residents of Portland, love living in town and walking everywhere. Would like to be able to bike more. Do you guys have any current statistics on bike accidents and fatalities and trends? I'm particularly interested in the trends in our area.
It's something GPCOG has been looking closely to for the Vision Zero action plan, specifically more severe deaths and fatalities. Jean might be able to speak to that in terms of the exact numbers.
Yeah, we track it more by state over the state and less by region, so I don't have those. But the last 2 years have been record highs in pedestrian fatalities in Maine, along with roadway fatalities last year. So the trends are not great. Bicycle deaths, fatalities, it's really been 2 bicycle fatalities a year for the past 5+ years. But the crash rates, I believe, are going up, but I don't have full numbers on there. The DOT has a really useful crash query tool. If you want to look at that, you can look by all kinds of different factors in there and regions, and it can help give you trends and data too.
I will add to that the GPCOG Vision Zero website does have a map that does have all of the bicycle and pedestrian crashes on it. So if you go to that website, right on the homepage there for it is a map. And Ginger, if you want to contact me, I can steer you towards some resources related to where that additional data is, if you have any additional questions or can't find it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And could you repeat your name and your position, and I'll reach out to you directly.
Bruce Hyman in the Planning and Urban Development Department. So bhyman@portlandmaine.gov.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will also compile all these resources into an email and send them to everybody afterwards. So any other questions, Patty?
Yeah, this is Patty Bruce, and I have a question for Bruce. I really am struck by the bi-directional traffic on the complete street that you showed us pictures of. Will you talk about that? Because it really it flies in the face of what I've been doing all my life of driving with traffic. So will you speak to us about how we adjust to that and what the changes, how we'll be impacted by that kind of change?
Well, basically we're trying to safely, where we can, recreate basically the experience of a shared use pathway, which is separated from traffic, typically like your Eastern Prom or your Bayside Trail. It's harder to integrate those onto urban streets. So that's why we're trying to, where we can, integrate them into sidewalk level facilities where we can.
Of the sidewalk level.
So some of them
Because they
in
can't
the
be
interim,
that way.
some of them in the interim phase, we're looking to use two-way facilities separated by flex posts and in a generous buffer as well. So yes, it is a little bit different from what the typical two one-way bike lanes are that we are typically implementing. But nationally, if you look at the experience, those aren't really garnering the increases in bicycling that we need to meet those climate action goals and the VMT reductions and mode shares in terms of getting more people biking and walking and taking transit. So we need to get a little bit more aggressive in terms of our facilities that we're developing. And so that those are the types of facilities that we're advancing.
Thank you.
Can I just make one comment on to that? I hadn't seen some of those plans, Bruce. I'm really excited about those. But I would just say, like, the importance of maintaining these facilities. If I can, I'm going to share a quick picture. But you know, this is along Park Ave in the protected bike lane in Portland. And so, you know, as we think about building these infrastructures, where they are matters. I mean, this is an inaccessible bike lane that forces people into the middle of the road with the snow, but even once a week on trash day, this is an inaccessible bike lane. So as we're thinking about these infrastructures, you know, the importance of including the maintenance of them, because they can quickly become unusable in a wintry state.
Yes, that's one of the reasons we're moving towards those sidewalk levels, so that the sidewalk and the bike lane can be cleared at the same time by, you know, a pickup truck with a snowplow blade on it, rather than
I think that can help a lot.
In between the on-street parking and the curb, where we can't really get at it very well, except when we do our snow ban parking days, which are quite frequently in the last week or so. But yes, it does lead to that, and maintenance is one of the lead reasons we're thinking of different facility configurations.
Another observation, it just strikes me that the design of the complete street will show us fewer and fewer signs where it says bicycles can take a lane. You're trying to get bicycles out of the traffic, it seems, with the complete street design. Is that a
yes, I mean, some of our current facilities are basically just paint on the streets, which doesn't provide a good level of comfort for most bicyclists. So we're trying to introduce that physical separation, either in our interim designs with those flex posts and buffers, but then eventually trying to move towards more physically separated bike lane facilities that, as I said, kind of mimic more the characteristics of a shared use pathway, but for bicycling.
And also say that it depends on the roadway type. So that's definitely true of our arterials and collector roads, but our small neighborhood streets, you know, I think it makes sense that they would be in the middle of the road, and we don't want to be creating more maintenance obligations through unnecessary sidewalks on local streets, low volume streets that can be safe if designed right with bikes in the road. I think Ray, you're first.
First of all, thank you all for your work on all these efforts. It's nice to see plans in place to enhance the biking experience here in Portland and South Portland. My question is mostly about drivers. I mean, I think any of us who have spent any amount of time on a bike here in Greater Portland have had an incident with drivers, you know, rude drivers, inconsiderate drivers, drivers who will basically tell you that you don't belong out here on their streets. Is there any sort of plan in place to educate the motoring public that we do in fact belong there, and that they need to share the road with us?
I can mention just a couple of things. So we, the Bicycle Coalition, and probably like 10 more years ago now, got into the Maine Motorist Handbook, information about sharing the road. And that is something we're regularly communicating with the Bureau of Highway Safety about updating those. And so that, as you can tell, only addresses new drivers, but trying to at least get in there. And we try to do some more like kind of public service information, or, as I mentioned, this bicycle and pedestrian safety education in schools can help with that. And I think as we find a lot of cases, right, when a kid's learn something, they can bring that back to their parents too. And so trying to do more of that, but it's a real challenge to educate people who are not in that learning phase of driving. I always find it kind of fascinating that you get your driver's license and you never have to like retake that test. So it's something that comes up a lot with us, but we try to address it at least through the ones who are actively educating drivers and the sort of rules of the road handbooks.
M.
Sorry, thanks, Mike. And thank you all for this presentation. I was also really struck by some of the slides and just wondered if the slide decks are not already available. Could they be made available?
Absolutely.
Then, second part was, and apologies, I was late, so if I missed this, I'm sorry, but I'm wondering about the Complete Streets work and all the policy changes going on, and the new technical manual that you mentioned, Cash. And the interface in Portland, at least, with the whole Portland recode process. To what extent is one informed by the other and vice versa? And finally, somebody mentioned the Safe Streets for All grant, and I'm just wondering if there are other similar kind of grant programs that we as cities are also going after in this domain. Thank you.
Bruce, you want to touch on recode?
Recode is primarily looking at the zoning ordinance that governs where things and what types of things are built in the city. We are obviously, well, not obviously, we are very intentionally looking at the transportation system and where transit routes are and where additional density can be beneficial to promoting transit-oriented development, so that we can, get more people out of their cars and such. So we are looking at it in a very integrated way. The recode process, we're in phase 2 right now, and there is a dedicated website to it that I can provide the links to Cashel to get more information on that.
And I think I have it right that City of Portland has a technical manual that a lot of their sort of street design lives in, and that can be updated by the planners as things change, and can be voted on by the planning board. Is that right, Bruce? Instead of City Council. We don't have that in South Portland. It all lives in ordinance, and so updating ordinance is a very long, sort of drawn out process through council. And so through this technical manual, we're hoping to reference the manual in ordinance and take a lot of what's lived in ordinance, and it wasn't a whole lot about complete streets. It was just basic design of ramps and other street design elements, and just reference the manual and then be able to update the manual over the years as new things come to light. So that's where that lands, and I think Portland and South Portland both draw on best practices that exist at the national level. NACDO is really where we look for bicycle and pedestrian design and transit design, and it changes over time. So as understanding develops, they get in there and they change things. So we hope the manual can be updated with time. And then you had a second part to your question, but you might have to remind me.
It was had to do with the mention of Safe Streets for All, which reminded me that Dakota Hewitt mentioned the other day also the Federal Transportation Alternatives Program. it's not huge, but they have more money than ever before. And he said specifically that they need to work with municipalities directly on that. And I just wondered if Portland and South Portland are working with him to draw down some of those funds as well, and or if there were other pots of money out there that the cities are pursuing too.
Yes, we're looking at the reconnecting communities grants, for instance, like Franklin Street, where we're looking to redesign Franklin Street and reconnect a bunch of the streets that were cut off when Franklin Street, like Oxford Street and Lancaster Street and Federal Street were all truncated when, so we're looking at things, and the Livytown project is perfect for a safe streets for all types of project or reconnecting community type of project. Ones that were mostly built when 295 came through the city and really made some of our, what we consider local streets, but our arterial streets, those 2-lane one-way pairs that are just pretty pernicious from a bicycle, pedestrian, and transit user perspective. So
the federal grants that are coming out of the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure law are very competitive. And so for little old South Portland to be applying for one by itself, it would be a lot of work and probably wouldn't work out. So we're excited about the Vision Zero action plan and the regional efforts, because applying as a region will make us more competitive. And, I think Portland has a case for reconnecting communities in Franklin. We don't really have a case. What the case would have been 295, I think, cutting off our city from Maine Mall, but we just did the multi-use path through there and feel good about that level of investment for now. So we tend to look for state grants, regional grants that GBCOG offers, and go for those. We also are on a holding pattern, but we have a lot of projects in the queue that we're just trying to get done. And so right now, it's just a matter of seeing those through and, getting those in. And so I mentioned a bunch of them, but, it's just about closing funding gaps and working it out with DOT and GBCOG to make that happen. And we're succeeding at that. Tika?
Hi, thank you. My question concerns the construction of new parking lots, particularly in downtown Portland. It seems to me that that's kind of going in opposition to, trying to get people out of their cars and all these very exciting potential, reconfigurations of the roadways that lead into Portland. More and more, in particular, more and more of the eastern waterfront is being consumed by the construction of new parking lots with hundreds and hundreds of new parking, room for hundreds and hundreds of new cars to come in. And I'm wondering, as a plan, is there any way, or is there any thinking in terms of planning about, essentially stopping the construction of additional parking lots in Portland?
Well, that's definitely a tough nut to crack. We are not funding any public parking garages. So Maine Med just built a ginormous one on the west end, and as you mentioned, on the eastern waterfront, those are all private sector parking garages, and we try and work with the developers to not overbuild them, but they do have, somewhat by right, the ability to do that. We did make a change in our first phase of our recode, where previously almost every development, except in some certain instances, downtown would have required off-street parking. And now we have a automatic exemption that developers and folks who are doing development can be exempt from all parking requirements within a quarter mile of a transit route. So we are trying to make some inroads related to that area in terms of, one, not requiring parking, but also when people are looking to build parking garages, that we don't have them overbuilt. But we recognize the same issue as Utica, for sure. So.
I heard the stat the other day that there are 2 billion parking spaces in the US. equivalent of 7 for every car. So it's definitely a problem, and something South Portland's looking at. But you know, the transit-oriented development piece, until we really feel comfortable about the level of you know, frequency of transit in our community, and that it's accessible for everyone, we can't, you know, remove parking requirements if there isn't a good alternative. So we're working with, you know, within what we're able to do, and you know, improve transit, improve biking and walking, and provide those exemptions over time, so that the ratios come down and the amount of parking people are building is being lowered over time. But it's a work in progress for a semi-suburban community in South Portland. So we're over time. I'll give Patty a chance to ask her last question, but be on the lookout for an email, or I'll provide all the resources that were mentioned today, and the slide decks and all that. And thanks for coming if you're heading out. Go ahead, Patty.
Thank you. I don't have a question. It's just a comment to share for general information. Through some work of a collaborative between Bicycle Coalition of Maine and Cumberland County law enforcement, I'm aware and want to spread the word that to the point of Ray, you know, that we need the motorists to share the road with bicyclists, and another point about educating, I think that Jean was speaking to. If you have an experience where a car comes within 3 feet of you while you're on your bicycle, if you have the wherewithal to get the license plate and the maker of the car, you just need to know it's a Honda. You don't need to know it's a Civic. If you can get those 2 pieces of information, call it into your local law enforcement. They will send a letter to the owner of the vehicle, because you aren't going to get a description of the driver to know if they're the owner or not. But the owner can get some feedback that is not allowed. That's against the law. So just spreading the word if you have that opportunity to give feedback.
Thanks, Patty. All right. I'll send everyone on their way, but thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, everybody. This was great.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jean, Bruce, and Cashel.